Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for coming to our Michael's Community Classroom on January 27th. We are super excited to talk about our FolkArt home decor chalk paint with Chris Williams. She's an expert in the craft and she's going to walk you through this really simple project. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments and I'll be able to relay that to Chris. So without any further ado, let's get started.
Well, thank you both, Humana, and thank you also, Emily, for that great introductions. I am Chris Williams, and I know the Michael's class was promoted that Kirsten Jones was going to be our lead teacher today. We did a little schedule changing and shifting around here of all of us and our work schedules. And so I'm here to fill in Kirsten's shoes. So I'm here to share with you what I know all about FolkArt home decor chalk. FolkArt home decor chalk is a fabulous paint. Michael's carries about 19 different colors that Plaid makes, and they also have a great sale going on right now, 20% off at Michael's. And Michael's has, besides those 19 colors, they also have the wax that's part of this program, and they also have the brush too. So, and let me just tell you, there's also a kit at Michael's that is 12 colors. That's all one FolkArt home decor chalk bundle that's also available at Michael's. So we're going to dive right into a couple different projects today. These projects, I can say I did not create myself because, as I said, last minute change, I'm kind of filling in shoes here, but they are adorable home decor accent projects. FolkArt home decor chalk is a paint that was first developed for that DIY enthusiast who loves to go thrifting or repurposing old pieces of furniture that you might have in your home. As a matter of fact, I used the cottage white color and I redid a whole 1950s bedroom suit that I inherited from my grandparents, and it's absolutely beautiful. FolkArt home decor chalk is a paint that can be brushed on without a lot of prep. Let's say we're working with an old piece of furniture that might have years of stain and perhaps pledge wax buildup and so on. All you really need to do is wipe down that furniture and clean it well. And then the FolkArt home decor chalk is such a full-bodied, thick paint that adheres beautifully with no other prep. There's no need to sand the surface down, no need to strip that finish off. It's a beautiful, beautiful paint that works on so many different types of furniture pieces. Today, we're going to do some home decor accent pieces. I have here a frame that is available at Michael's, and this is what the frame looks like, one of these new floating frames that are so popular. I've already taken the glass out of this one, but this is a great little wood beaded frame that we're going to paint today. We're also going to show you how to repurpose a couple thrift store old books. So we can do some book covers with some decoration. We're going to talk about how it can be used on glass for decorative purposes only. And we're also going to thin the paint down. And we're going to do a kind of like a barnwood stain or wash of color on an unfinished wood tray. So let's just kind of dive right into it. We've got several pieces to do in a short amount of time. As you all know, we're only here for about an hour together. As Emily said, if any of you have questions, be sure and type them in the chat because Emily's here to either answer those questions or relay them on to me. So let's just dive right in, okay? I have here a color that is, and we can go overhead. Oh, we already are. Perfect. This is FolkArt home decor chalk. I'm going to bring the label up so you can even see the label. This one color happens to be Maui sand, which is a beautiful warm gray color. When you work with the paints, when you work with a brand new bottle, you're going to see that there's a heat seal on here. And I often will just remove that heat seal by using a utility knife or a craft knife, and I will just cut along that edge. And you can remove this very quickly and easily. And then I kind of pinch it so that I don't get a lot of paint on me. And then just move it aside, and I'm going to throw this into the trash. And that is the best way to begin working with that. I saved one that still had the lid on it to show you how to do that. But the first color I want to use is this white. It's a beautiful white. It's called white Adirondack. And I like to shake the paint well. It's a very rich, thick, full body paint. It is water-based. It's non-toxic. All your tools clean up with soap and water, but you do want to make sure that it's thoroughly mixed. And you can either shake the bottle or you can put like a paint stick stirrer or a dowel rod in, and you can actually shake it and stir it that way too. I'm going to let some of that paint that got on the cap come off. And there we go. The tool that I'm going to show you we're going to work with, this is a great paintbrush here. This is called the FolkArt Home Decor Chalk Brush. This is a smaller size. You'll find this at Michael's. This has got beautiful bristles that are stiffer than like a tackle-on brush. They're not very, very stiff like here's like a chip brush. They're almost kind of like a chip brush. These bristle ends are what we call a flagged end. That means if you think about your hair, it's kind of like a split end. So it gives you the opportunity to absorb more paint in your brush load. So when you are painting that bigger piece, like a big piece of furniture, you're going to notice that you won't have to stop and reload your brush as often. I'm dipping right into the jar of open paint here, and you can see, I'm going to bring this up to the camera. There's just paint on the bottom bristles, and I'm going to use this to just paint real quickly directly on this unfinished wood piece. And this, you can see here, has, I'm going to bring it up so you can see closer, the little balls. That is a beautiful little trim on this frame. This was found in the framing section at Michael's, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint this long, smooth strokes on the outside. And then I'm also going to work about horizontally here in between the balls, just to kind of get some of that color in there. This paint is, like I said, water-based. It's non-toxic. It does set up and dry very, very quickly. But what we're going to do to kind of get our 4 projects started today is just primarily do a lot of base coating at first, just so that we can have some drying time before we begin on working on some distressing techniques. And I'm just working this bristles of the brush back and forth between all the little grooves here. If for some reason you missed a spot and you didn't get it completely down in every single little groove, I think it's quite all right, because I'll show you the finished piece here in just a second. We're going to go with a more distressed, more farmhouse look. And I think it would be okay, even if you did miss a little section here and there. You can see I'm working just very quickly to get this painted. I don't want that tapping noise. I shouldn't hold it. I shouldn't set it down just yet. Okay. And our last side here, I'm going to briskly brush that white on. Again, this is white Adirondack, and this color is so heavily pigmented. The pigment load on this paint is so nice. You'll notice that you do not have to put several coats on things. Sometimes with a white, maybe you do. This paint is beautiful in that it brushes on smoothly, and it also dries very, very quickly. And a lot of times you can cover things in just one brush load. All right, I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. If you wanted to do your chalk paint on a surface and let it be just that, that's all you have to do. You can even come back, and if you wanted it more opaque, you could put a second coat on there. But what we're going to do on this piece here, I'm going to bring this up closer so that you can see the detail. Can you see on the little balls, there is some distressing to kind of give this more of an antique farmhouse finish. So what we're going to do is let this part here dry before we go on to the next step. All right. While I have the white paint in my brush, I'm also going to share with you this little piece here. Let me take my faux plant out. This is the glass vase that you'll find at Michael's, and typically chalk paint is meant for decorative purposes only on glassware, in that this cannot be baked to cure, this cannot be washed. So if you're using anything like decorative, mason jars are beautifully chalk painted. This is a vase for a dried floral arrangement, or if you were using it for your paintbrushes, your pen and pencils, whatever, this is perfectly fine. Do not put it on glassware that you intend for food service and or that you intend to maybe perhaps wash and wear. This is not a washable paint. So again, it's for decorative purposes only, but I want you to see how beautifully that covered on that glass. And this is just one coat of paint. So I have here a little canning jar here, and I'm going to take the lid off. And what we're going to do for this effect is, if you can see here, we use this same brush. We began at the bottom or the base of the vase, and we brushed up, allowing not a taped straight edge, but we allowed more of, if you can see there, kind of a wispy edge where it's leaving the brush marks just for a different type of finish. So again, working with that white FolkArt Home Decor chalk paint, it's white Adirondack. We're going to put just a little bit of paint on the bottom of the brush again. And I'm going to begin here at the base, and I'm going to brush up and let it wisp. And then you can see here, let me turn it this way, perhaps better. There you can you see the little wispy edge? That's all there is to this particular technique. And you can bring that height of that brush stroke up as tall as you want. And this is all we're doing on this particular piece, is we're just doing this kind of like as an accent. And while you have the white paint in your brush from base coating the frame, it's a great idea to go ahead and work with the glassware before cleaning your brush. I'm just rotating this glass. And again, I'm stroking with a fairly light pressure, especially light as I begin to lift for that wispy tail at the end. I'm going to flip that brush around. This brush holds so much paint. And like I said in the beginning, I did some furniture using the FolkArt Home Decor chalk. You'll notice that especially when you're working on a big project like a piece of furniture, this brush load will cover and carry you through a long section of that piece of furniture. This type of, brought another one here. This type of glassware is really fun too, if you can find things that have a pattern to them, because you can paint over, and maybe you'll see it now a little bit more when I paint on it. Can you see that there's more of a pattern to this glassware? This sort of look is also kind of fun because you can either come back with a second color and accent on top here and let the color hit the highlights of this pressed glass design. Or you could even take, once it's dry, you could take a little bit of sandpaper and you can hit the surface with the sandpaper or a sanding block, and the paint will come off of those raised areas, kind of giving you a reverse effect. And this is beautiful because then the pattern of the glassware really shows up, and the detail of that glassware shows up so beautiful. Again, I just want to reemphasize that even though I'm decorating and painting on glassware, this is not food safe, nor is it washable. So this would be for decorative purposes only. So think about this sort of thing as storage in your crafting room, maybe for pens and pencils and paintbrushes and tools like that. Okay, I'm going to move on to a couple books I have here. And again, I want to show you a couple different techniques with our books. Repurposing an old book from a thrift store is such a fun idea. And then you can stack the books up or display them on a mantle or even in a bookshelf or a bookcase. I've got two different books here, so there's two different techniques. This book here, this smaller one, we worked with two different blues. On the supply list today, you saw a color called Nautical, which is a gorgeous, deep, rich navy blue color. And you also saw another color called Blue Chill, and that's the color that you're seeing here at the top here. And it's more of a vibrant blue, very perfect for spring. To me, it's a very beautiful springy color. So this book here was painted by painting the navy blue color, the Nautical, on over the whole book. And then a second color was brought back, which is our Blue Chill, on top with that same wispy type effect. This book here was done completely different. And this was painted with, again, the darker blue. This is the Nautical. And then I've got a real trick to show you how we could do the distressing look that you see here on this book. So for right now, let's just go ahead and grab a brush. I'm going to open up my Nautical. Emily, we're doing okay? Any questions?
I was having some technical issues, so I'm going to catch up real soon. So I will let you know.
All right, good deal. Well, I hope everyone's having a good time. I would love to know if any of you have painted with the chalk paint before, FolkArt home decor chalk, if possibly you have refurbished a piece of furniture, whether it was an old piece that perhaps you purchased along the way thrifting, or if it's maybe even a piece like I did. I inherited a bedroom suit that I just totally loved, but did not love the wood grain that was on it. So I found a way to love it even more by putting chalk paint on mine. And it's just such a beautiful way to refurbish, restyle, relove a beautiful piece of furniture. And I will tell you that if you are doing a distressing technique on the furniture, any furniture that has more of a, what do I say, more of a, perhaps the table legs have some scroll work, or there's more design to it, more design elements to the piece, that is even better rather than such a smooth, even piece. I'm going to go ahead and I won't do the back of my book cover right now, just going to do the binding and the front.
So we do have some question here, Chris.
Okay.
One is that they're asking, do you have to sand any of the furnitures or surfaces that you are applying the chalk paint to?
Okay, when you are repurposing a piece of furniture, the best thing to do is to clean the furniture. You want it dust-free. Even a piece of furniture, like I said, you may have inherited a piece that is vintage, or you may have even purchased a vintage piece. It may have years of wax buildup on it. What you want to do is, there's no need at all to sand, smooth, or to strip the finish, or to remove anything that's on there. The best thing is to just make sure that the surface is fully clean. The only time I would ever sand something is if you had a lot of texture on there and you did not want texture on your end result, on your last piece, the last surface, after you finish painting it. And then if you do distress it, you may choose to sand a distress, but you can also do another distressing technique where you actually add paint to distress. Usually distressing means that you are revealing, you're removing paint to reveal the colors underneath. That is generally when people say they're distressing the furniture, that's usually what they're doing is there's a base color, then there might be some drying time in between, and then you move on to the next color. And when people talk about distressing, a lot of times they are using either a sanding block or a piece of sandpaper, and they're sanding off to reveal what's down underneath. But you can also use a technique that we do often, and you're actually adding paint to distress. And we're going to show you that in just a moment. I want to get these two books set aside so that they can be drying. So now we've got our frame base coated, we've got our glassware base coated, and I've got two books base coated. Before we go on to the techniques used on those, I'm going to worry about one more piece, and that is our wood tray. I'm going to bring this into view so you can see the finished piece a little bit more. This is a surface that you can find at Michael's, and this product that's on here is called Maui sand. It's a beautiful gray color, but when it's watered down, it kind of gives you more like a barnwood effect. And this allows the natural grain of the wood to show. You can see some of the knots here are still showing through, and it gives you a really beautiful kind of weathered effect. And what we're going to do with that on my unfinished wood tray that I have here, this was just an unfinished wood tray. You can see that there are some knots, some wood grain showing. This one has handles on the side, so it's great for serving beverages and so on. Let me get my Maui sand out. And this is something that's very easy to do. You're going to actually use some water with the paint. And I'm going to move aside here and make a space so you can kind of see. I'm actually going to pour some of the paint out onto my wax paper palette. I have a very large size wax paper palette here on the table, and I'm going to pour out a little dollop of the paint.
You're living dangerously, Chris.
I know, with my white frame and everything all right here, right? But
Yes.
I want to make sure that everything is base coated before we get into the rest of the actual teaching parts of distressing, because our drying time is so important. So now I do have next to me here, it might be a little off camera, I do have a little container of water here, my brush basin. I have another one of our beautiful FolkArt home decor chalk brushes. I'm going to dip it into some water. And this will absorb, like I said, this brush is beautiful because it does hold a lot of paint and it will also then hold a lot of water. So I'm going to bring this water-filled brush over to where my puddle of paint is. I'm going to thin down some of that paint almost to like a stain consistency. And what I'm going to do now is just simply brush this onto the wood piece. And if you find that you like it, that is absolutely wonderful. If you want it thinner and you want more wood showing through, you can often pick up a paper towel or even a baby wipe, and you can wipe over it just kind of like you are staining a piece. And you can help spread some of that paint a little bit further. Now I'm going to stop and do another brush load of water, some more paint, and continue doing this till you feel like you've got the wood tray here filled the way you want it. And what I'm going to do is let this dry. This will raise the nap of the wood or the grain of the wood. So once this is completely down dry, I would then come back with a sanding block or a piece of sandpaper and sand this out smooth because you don't want to have a rough texture on your wood tray. And if those of you that prefer to get in the dirt, so to speak, into the weeds, you can take and load your baby wipe or your paper towel with this excess thinned out FolkArt home decor chalk paint, and you can even wipe it on, like sometimes you wipe a stain on. So you can dip it with the brush or dip it with the baby wipe or a soft lint-free rag. And you can see how beautiful. I'm going to show you this one edge here. Can you see the wood grain and how it's starting to show up? This
Yes,
is just,
you can.
This is just like a stain. And I, in this case, use the baby wipe, but you can also go back to your brush if you don't want to use your fingers or get your fingers into it. And this moves very, very quickly. This is not something that you need to labor over. It will fill in and color your surface beautifully in a short amount of time. Let me get my brush here into the corner a little bit, into that corner. Any questions for anyone? You're welcome to ask them. Emily is here to help.
Yeah, we do have some. Somebody was talking about plastic shiny photo frames and if they needed to do any prep work, which you kind of did cover in regards to sanding or just cleaning, but people were just really curious about if this formula can be used on plastic.
Well, here again, just like the glassware, it would not be for permanent uses. If you did something on a rigid plastic surface, like the photo frame you mentioned, you would want to make sure that it was for decorative purposes only. So with a photo frame, that would be, but I'm thinking if someone would then interpret it to like a rigid plastic tumbler or pitcher, that would not be something I would do because you would not be able to then wash it. It would not be then food service worthy.
Right, and that kind of leads into another question about a serving dish. They were wondering if you could use wax or varnish on top of it to make it do that purpose. Could you go into a little bit more detail about if that's appropriate or not?
Okay, so when you finish a piece of FolkArt home decor chalk, I'm going to keep working while I talk with you on this piece. Okay?
Perfect.
When you finish a piece of FolkArt home decor chalk, with, let's say it's a piece of furniture, you may want to seal it and protect that FolkArt home decor chalk paint. The paint is going to dry to a very porous, very beautiful matte finish. So you'll want to finish that piece so that you'll protect it for many, many years to come. I'm sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, ma'am, I was just listening.
Okay, I thought you were starting to say something, sorry. So yes, you do want to seal it. So there's a couple different ways you can seal a piece that has been painted with FolkArt home decor chalk. And you can brush on a beautiful water-based finish. We do make a satin water-based varnish that gives that matte natural finish of the FolkArt home decor chalk just a little bit more pizzazz with a satin finish. You could also use one of our chalks. Now, Michaels carries the clear chalk that is available as part of this product line. And the chalk is, or the wax, I should say, is beautiful in that it's clear and you simply brush it on and then you buff it out. I will tell you, if you do a piece of furniture with that chalk finish, you will need to touch up that chalk or that wax-based finish every so often. I'm going to clean this area off here a little bit before we move back to some of our dried pieces. I'm going to hold the tray up. Now, normally I would take the time to do the back side of the tray too, but for today's purposes, I just wanted to show you this really does pick up, especially if you look in here where you can see the wood grain. It picks up the beauty of the wood grain and it gives you more of a, here's another little area where you can see the wood grain is so beautiful here on the inside edges. This just gives you the look of a stain, and you didn't have to buy a stain. You didn't have to buy another product. All you did was just use water to thin down that FolkArt home decor chalk. This color is Maui sand, and I think this is just beautiful. What I will do now, because there's a lot of moisture to this, it might take a little bit longer to dry than the rest of the half hour that we have here together. So what I would do is let this completely dry. I can, as I'm touching it now, I can feel an awful lot of moisture because we did thin that down with water. So this is going to take a little while to dry, but then I would come back with a sanding block or a piece of sandpaper. I've got a piece of sandpaper here too. I would come back with either one of these two things. Basically, you want to sand then smooth, moving in the direction of the wood grain. Sand this smooth because you want your finished wood tray to be nice and smooth whenever you get ready to decorate within this or use this as a serving tray and you're serving your beverages on here. But this is such a fun thing with in the farmhouse style is to put a tray out and put a couple books in here, put your vase with your flowers, even have a photograph in here and kind of make yourself a little display area all within a tray. And then if you have a large enough ottoman or a table, coffee table even, that makes a beautiful home decor setting right there in your home.
So that brings up a great point. Yeah. So somebody was asking after it dries, could they use the FolkArt multi-surface on top of it to paint an image? And I think you just kind of covered that. Yes, you can. It would be really fun to personalize.
Yes. So like with this tray, if you wanted to, if you had a stencil, let's say, of your family's last name and you wanted to do a monogram in here, that would be absolutely beautiful. If you are a decorative painter and you wanted to add a few florals here and perhaps in the corners, that would be beautiful too. This could be a great base for any kind of painting then on top, whether you choose to stencil or decorative paint. You could even, you know, the modern look right now, of course, is sometimes adding a little diagonal design to it, making it look like it's half dipped into paint. You could do something like that. Depending upon what your taste and your style is, you most definitely could use this as a base for other painted techniques. I saw a question come through a moment ago that somebody was asking, can you use this on terracotta pots? The answer to that is yes. FolkArt home decor chalk works on any kind of surface that is a great porous surface. Now, granted, our glassware is not porous, but remember that's for decorative purposes only. So if you were wanting to decorate a flower pot, you most assuredly can use FolkArt home decor chalk on that. When you do terracotta pots, though, we always suggest that you seal the interior of the pot if you were going to use it for a plant. If you're just using the terracotta pot for storage of some kind of other things, like maybe it's your paintbrushes in the studio, maybe it's cooking utensils in the kitchen.
Or a faux plant even.
Yes, then you don't need to seal the inside of the terracotta plant pot. You said plant, that made me think to say plant. Sorry. But if you are using it with a plant, you do want to seal the interior. And the reason why I'm saying that is, let's pretend this is our terracotta pot. you want to seal the inside of the terracotta pot as you are decorating the outside with your FolkArt home decor chalk, because if you put real soil or real plant in there and you are going to water that plant from time to time, that water is going to seep through the walls of that terracotta pot, and it could create a paint blister on the outside, no matter what paint you're using, not just the FolkArt home decor chalk, even acrylic paints can blister. So it's always advisable to seal the interior of your terracotta pot. So I saw that question come through, so you didn't have to ask me on that one, Emily. All right, so I'm going to put our, oh, go ahead.
Just somebody else just asked a question that, do you experience an odor or any fumes when working with this product?
I do not smell, I mean, it's a paint smell, but I don't smell anything like stinky. So I've got some Maui sand still open here. I had the white open and I've had the Nautical open. I did not experience anything That's was
great to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've just set my brushes here off to the side, but these will all clean up beautifully in soap and water once I'm done with today's project. So what I want to do next, before I start sanding and get any sanding dust from our white frame here, I do want to show you the two books that we base coated. They're all dry and set and ready to go. This book right here, and I'll just use this one as my example. This one, as I said, we base coated with the FolkArt Home Decor Chalk Nautical, which is a really beautiful navy blue color. And this one, you can see this brighter blue, more vivid blue on the top. We're going to use the same technique like we did with the white, where we're going to start solid on one edge with a little bit of pressure, stroking towards to whatever length you want, and then begin lifting off so that you do get kind of like that little wispy edge there. Just gives you another little fun trick, another little fun look, if I will say, and a little more modern twist to an old vintage book. This color here is called Blue Chill, and it's absolutely a beautiful color. And I'm going to show you on this one, just another tool, another brush. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch flat brush for this technique, and it's very simply done. I'm going to start, let's see, I don't know that it matters top to bottom or bottom up. I'm going to go top down. I just had to look and see where my text was in this book. So I'm going to load my brush with Blue Chill, and you can see it's a really rich, very pretty color on my 3/4 inch flat brush. And I'm going to start here at the top of my brush, or the top of my book, I should say. And I'm just going to brush down, and I'm going to get that hit or miss kind of wispy effect. I'm going to fill up a little bit more. There we go. And it's one stroke down, and I get that little wispy edge. And I'm just going to do the same thing from the top all the way down, trying not to end at the same spot. So we want that wispy hit or miss look to be at various lengths on this book. And when you think about this project, like I said, these are all beautiful little home decor things. They can be used independently or all together. Take that wood tray and then fill it up with these beautiful layered books. Once everything's dry, you can layer your books and then add the photo frame in there, apply your favorite photo in there or a piece of artwork within the frame, and add the little glass with perhaps some faux finished flowers. And it's a beautiful little setting that you can lay out on your farm table, whether it's your kitchen table, your dining room table. You could even lay it out on the coffee table. But this is just all there is to this particular technique. I do have, because my book here is pretty wet still, I do have a couple spots here where I might go back and put a little bit more paint on, just to kind of keep it kind of even in color. And then of course you can bring it around to the side here where the binding is. And of course, don't forget the backs of your books too. But again, for time's sake today, I just wanted to share this technique. Very, very simply done, very easily done. And I'll just take.
Yeah, each project that you do like this is going to be very unique. So as you can see here, this application was very similar, but they look so fun and different. It's so cool.
And I just took my brush over to my container of water and I just swished it back and forth a few times, and you can see how beautifully clean your tools wash away with this paint. No need to worry about any particular cleanups, in other words. I'm going to set this book aside and I'm going to bring the other book up to view. This book is really a fun technique. This again was our book that was painted with the Nautical, which was the darker blue. And I think what we're going to do with this one is we're going to accent with some of the white Adirondack. And I'm going to shake a little bit, open up my bottle. I'm going to add a little bit of that here onto, I'm going to make a little space here so you can see, add a little bit of that onto my wax paper palette. Or I could, you know what, I could probably just use the paint that's in the cap here. There's still a good amount of paint in the cap. So you can do one of the two things. You could put a little bit out, or you could use there's a pretty good size amount here in my cap. So I'll just use this as my area to fill. This technique is a distressed effect. Now I could go ahead and use my sanding block or my sandpaper, and I could come back and I could sand along these edges to expose the color that was underneath, which on this book was more like a brown color. So I could expose by sanding to remove this blue to expose the brown underneath. Or if you want to accent with another color, like we're going to do with our white here, you can take just a small little square piece of scrap wood. This is going to be the tool that you're just going to love. And this is so simple. It is magic, and it's so simple and it's so easy, and everyone just loves this. And what we're going to do once this tool is loaded with our paint, I'm going to bring this up close so you can kind of see how hit or miss. And it does look as though this book was sanded, and you can see layers of paint down through it, like years. Think about this on a piece of furniture, like even a chair. This is a beautiful technique to use. And when you see this, it does give you the appearance as though there are layers of paint and it's been worn, sanded down, or, you know, think about that chair that Grandpa sat in all the time, and he always had his arms on the arm rest here, and eventually he wore away layers of paint, and you're going to start seeing the colors showing underneath. It's that same technique here on our book. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this little square. Oh, maybe I do need to pour it out. It's a little bit bigger than my cap. So let me just go ahead and give myself a little bit of white. If you have a smaller piece of wood, you could have used the cap. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this tool with the flat part down into my paint, and I'm going to load some up on my paint. Load the paint, I should say, up on my block. And can you see now my block is now got some paint on the edge? No need to fill the whole one, because I'm going to primarily use the part that has the paint in it. I've tapped here on that wax paper palette a couple of times just to give me a nice smooth application of paint. You don't want a tremendous amount of paint. Can you all see that? So I've got a little bit.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So now what I'm going to do is very, very lightly, I'm going to like skim just the edges of this book and anywhere else that I might want to put a little paint. Again, referring to the finished one, you can bring some of the paint into the center too, but think about the areas that are worn. So on a book, it's usually the edges that are very worn. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to lightly skim, and we can even put some on the edges. Lightly skim.
That's so pretty, Chris.
It gives you a very random hit or miss effect. Now think about on the book here, on the binding, there is a little bit of an edge, and then there's always that rounded part. So this would be beautifully highlighted. And you also, this would be a worn area of the book, because when someone's reading the book is opened up quite often. It maybe even might be bent back a little bit. So give yourself a little bit of a distressed effect there on the edges too. And see how fun that is? It just gives you a beautiful distressed finish. This is going to dry again to a very matte finish. So this technique is a way of distressing, giving you that effect as though there is layers worn away and we're exposing the white underneath. When you know and I know the white was not underneath. We distressed by adding paint. Normally you do distress by removing paint, but this is a great way to distress by adding paint. Any questions on this technique?
No, just a comment that I would like to mention, just to make sure that when you're using the wood block, to make sure that you're not being heavy-handed. It's really just a very gentle grazing across the surface.
Yes, Emily is so right. And it's also another key thing is the amount of paint that's on your little wood block. Again, it needs to be a very sparse amount or a very light amount. You don't want to like go in and scoop up and be very heavily painted on the bottom side of your wood block. It's not a heavy application. It's a loading and kind of tapping to maybe offload a little bit and making sure that it's a very smooth amount. And I'll just go ahead and do another swipe so you all can see again, just one more time. Very light. And I'm just barely touching the surface. I'm just kind of grazing a little of the surface. If I was very heavily handed or heavily loaded on my little square block, you would not get this like sputtering effect of paint color. You would not get that beautiful little sputters. It would be more like a heavy streak as though you almost did it with a brush. So it's very important that is light paint on the tool itself, our little wooden block. And it's also very light pressure. And I'm just barely touching the surface. It's not only light pressure, but barely touching the surface. So this is a fun thing to do when you think about bigger pieces and accent pieces, even going back to the furniture. This is a beautiful technique. And I'll be honest with you, when you do the chalk paint and you are removing the layers to expose underneath colors, like the technique of sanding to remove a previously painted color, sometimes you have a long time in sanding. It takes a while to remove that layer of paint to expose the previous colors, where this is so quick, so easy. And then this tool, the little simple block of wood, could be wiped off on your paper towel or baby wipe. And you can, it will be stained because I have paint on it, but you can let this dry and reuse this over and over and over again. It's a great little tool.
So we do have a question. There was somebody that was talking about blocks with handles on them, and how do they differ from just the wood block, the scrap piece of wood that you are using today?
Okay, this was just something that most people might have as a simple little scrap piece of wood. We make also in the FolkArt Home Decor chalk line what we call a layering block. I don't believe Michaels carries it, but it is a plaid product. And it's a little bit bigger. It's perfect for larger surfaces. I want to think that the square might be as big as what I'm showing you right now. It might be like maybe 3.5 to 4 inch square. And it does have like a little knob handle to it. That layering block is the same concept, same desired effect, same everything, but it's a larger surface. It still can be used just on the edge of things, you know, like you've got that layering block, you might just be still doing the edge of a piece of furniture, but it also can be used across the full flat of the tabletop if you wanted to add a little bit more accent there. That's so
it's so funny that people are asking about the sizes of these blocks, because in the at Plaid, you will see the creators use these really tiny, like dice-sized scraps of wood to do very small surfaces. So I think it really depends on what project you're doing, because like I said before, you don't want to be really heavy-handed. So you don't want to take this huge block of wood on a small surface, because it's going to coat it very quickly. So I think it really depends.
Yeah, you're right, Emily. It just depends upon the desired look and the desired effect of what you might want to do. All right, I'm going to set my books aside now, and I'm going to bring back the very first piece that we began our lesson with today, and that was this really fun wood frame. I'm going to bring this up one more time so you can see it up close. I want you to take a look at like the little wood trim of the balls that are on top of, and I'm going to show you the side. This is just a regular wood frame that this gorgeous little wood trim was added to. And when we started our class today, this was just an unfinished piece. And the first thing we did was we removed the glass of the floating frame out of the frame so that we could work with the frame direct. And here it is now. It's the white Adirondack FolkArt Home Decor chalk base coated. It's very lightly painted. It's dry. I can touch it. Nothing's coming off on my hands. And to distress using sandpaper or a sanding block, we're just going to come along. This did raise the grain a little bit. It's not too rough though, but we want it smooth. So we're just going to lightly, and it's a good thing I saved this for last because I'm going to get some sanding dust here on my work table. But we're just going to lightly sand. And if you wanted to, like, let me get my pointer here. I'm going to use my craft knife. If I wanted to distress like this top edge here of the wood, just underneath where it meets the balls, just trim, I would then come in here and just distress an edge. I'm going to show you how I've done that just by moving the sanding block back and forth. Can you see there's just a little bit more worn area on there? And then we'll do the same thing on the top where our little ball trim is. And I'm just going to go back and forth on that till I get it as distressed as I want. So if I moved it back and forth, if I took my sanding block and moved it back and forth just on the top surface of the balls, I'm only going to get the top of each ball. I'll do that one right here on this side. Okay. This side here only shows the top of the ball that where paint has been removed. My first one here, I've got it almost across the top. Let me see, where am I? Almost across the top here of the ball. So what I did was I did it across the top. Then I moved it on an angle and I went across the side on an angle. Then I came across on the inside and did an angle. So wherever you want to distress and remove that paint, you just move that sanding block. And don't forget to do the inside like I'm doing right now, the interior, because you do want to have some time-worn areas on the inside of the frame there too. I'm trying to get the camera to focus in on that one little area there. So that's all there is to this frame, to sand smooth, as well as remove a little bit of that FolkArt home decor chalk paint. Now this paint does sand very easily, and the paint, it creates almost like a very fine dust. It will remove the color very quickly, but when you're doing a whole set of bedroom furniture and you've got the headboard, the footboard, the side rails, you've got perhaps a vanity and a dresser and wood around the mirror, a lot of sanding motion can be cut in very short time period by doing the distressing, by adding paint versus by removing paint.
So Chris, I think you've done a great job at explaining both the distressing techniques. I think something that you can note about this product is that it's wonderful for layering and it's not going to peel up. So like, for example, if you wanted to paint the photo frame with that beautiful blue color that you did on the books and then go over it with the white, sanded the white, you'd be able to see that blue underneath where you sand, and it's not going to go down to the surface. And it's just so fascinating to me that this paint is that versatile.
Well, here's another thing you could do. I know this wasn't what was on our sample, but I still have some Maui sand from when we did the wood tray. I still have a little bit of Maui sand in this one brush. I can pick up some of that Maui sand. And let's say gray and white is part of your color scheme in your house. If you wanted to add just a little bit of gray here and there,
I love it. Yeah.
you could even come back, I'm trying to show it up to the camera, and accent even that wood trim of the beads and add a little bit of gray on top. So that's even something else you could do. You could kind of like use this to dry brush from the corners streaking in. I don't know.
I love your freestyling, Chris. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you. It's fun. Once you get started, your mind can just go crazy and you could start thinking about all kinds of fun things you can do. This FolkArt home decor chalk is a paint that's been around for quite a while now, several years. And it just, I think, is the perfect thing for that DIY home enthusiast, thrift store lover. Because gosh, think about all the things you can purchase.
Upcycle and recycle. Yes, ma'am.
Right. And then of course you want to also visit your local Michaels stores, because all of these surfaces that we chose to work with today, our frame, the glass vase, and our wood, let me get the tray back in here. Our wood tray is all from Michaels. So let's go ahead and set everything up with our finished pieces here.
I'm
So that
excited.
again-
Everything's going to come together beautifully, Chris.
I think so too, because I think it's just a great way. Here's our book that we did today. Let's layer it. Let's see, that one's not quite dry yet. Let's layer it with another book. We'll raise and kind of create a little vignette here. I'm going to turn this so that you're going to get to see the books, not me. And let's add our little vase and our frame. Let's maybe move this aside a little bit. Let's put maybe my first book might be a little bit too big. Move that out. I want to make sure there's room for my frame in here. And then we could add our vase. We could add our little.
This is perfect for an ottoman or coffee table, a side coffee table. I just think that is so fun, Chris.
And remember this glass piece here that we did. This was our canning jar that had some texture or design to it. So the same kind of thing. You can take either the dry brush and kind of wisp over to kind of pick up that texture on the glass. So that's adding paint to it to kind of get that relief of the pattern. And or you can take and use your sanding block or your sandpaper and lightly brush over this, and it will remove some of that paint so that you're going to expose the original glass and you're going to be able to see the pattern. So you can kind of get a textured effect by removing the paint and or by adding the paint. So that's something fun to think about too when you're looking for glass pieces. So I think this kind of brings us to a finish today. Do we have any other last minute questions, Emily?
No, ma'am. You seem to answer everything for everyone. I think they're mesmerized by all the techniques that we covered. And I really appreciate you talking about this. And don't forget that you can rewatch this again.
Yes, and remember too that Michaels has a sale going on right now. All of the FolkArt home decor chalk paint at Michaels, both online as well as in the stores, is running 20% off right now. So it's a great time to think about trying to repurpose and give some new love to a piece that you might have at your house. And once you do that, be sure and take a picture. Share it on all your social areas. Be sure to share it within our Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group or our Plaid Crafts Facebook group. Use the hashtag Michaels Classes, Make It with Michaels, Let's Paint Challenge, and one more.
Plaid Crafts?
Plaid Crafts, yes.
Yeah.
So I hope you all enjoyed it, learned a little bit something new today. We love having you in the Michaels classes. And until our next Michaels class, I hope you all have fun using FolkArt home decor chalk.
Bye.